Welcome back to Cocktails and Classics. It's another dad chat. Just two dads drinking and watching, talking about movies your dad's probably seen. And this is the first official one that, since Isla has been born.
Yeah. How about
So,
that?
uh, it's no longer like a buddy comedy movie where it was like,
It's
one's a dad to be.
now now it's
Together they watch
now
movies.
it's a sad drama movie. One's a dad. The other one's also a dad. They're tired, but they're gonna talk about a movie.
They had an hour and a half break from caring for their child to watch this movie in peace. And now they're going to talk about it.
Now they've managed to find another hour and a half to talk about it.
Granted, it's 9 at night and the baby has been asleep for. And they can't talk too loud or else the child will wake up. It's a sad existence.
Oh, it is.
It's almost a horror movie, some would say. Much like the movie we watched this week.
Oh, what a
No.
segue. What a segue.
This week we're doing The Lost Boys. It's Warner Brothers' 100th anniversary, and we've kind of been doing a couple Warner Brothers movies in a row here, so you still have time. If you haven't heard, you haven't listened to any of our other episodes, or it's your first episode, go to our Instagram right now at Cocktails and Classics Pod and enter our giveaway where we teamed up with Warner Brothers to give away 5 movie bundles, and you can win The Maltese Falcon, Rebel Without a Cause, and Cool Hand Luke for the first time in 4K UHD. You got to be in the US, you got to be 13 years or older. Go follow the instructions over there. It's a like, a share, a tag, or something like that. Win $30 worth of free movies, you know?
And not like $5 bin movies. These are not just, some sort of rummage through and find in a middle aisle of a Walmart. These are classic films.
So because of this, I've been on the WB 100 website, which is like they've been doing sales and stuff. So those movies are on sale right now. Even if you want to wait and try and win the giveaway, or you go buy them right now on Warner Brothers. This Lost Boys was on sale last week. Like it was like $5 maybe for the UHD. I should have bought it then because it was not on sale this week.
Ah, yeah.
And I was sad boy. I was like, damn. Had you seen this?
No.
Okay, I hadn't either. It was on my watch list for a long time. And I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's dive in. Let's just, let go of the bars and float on down to our cocktail.
It's just going to be like the battle of the segues. So this week, we're doing the Blood and Sand cocktail. It's fitting. Vampires, blood. And I was trying to find something that literally was not like bright red with like some crazy shit in it, like cranberry juice or something. Blood and Sand cocktail is a classic scotch cocktail. It was the complete history is somewhat shaky, but it is accepted that it was inspired by the movie Blood and Sand. The original film was produced in 1922, remade in 1941, and again in 1989. The ingredients are 3/4 of an ounce of scotch, 3/4 of an ounce of a cherry brandy or like a cherry herring, cherry liqueur, 3/4 of an ounce of a sweet vermouth, and then 3/4 of an ounce of orange juice. I was reading that apparently, I think it was liquor.com had like an opinion piece kind of thing where it was like, what's wrong with the Blood and Sand cocktail? Like, why does it suck? And like the answer was like, you're not shaking it hard enough. So they were like, vigorously shake this thing, like to get it almost frothy. And it's going to be, you're going to get a little bit of sweet citrus. And then hopefully you're going to get some of that. They recommend fresh squeezed orange juice, or that's where you're going to get that like nice citrus taste. And then you'll get a little bit of the cherry from the cherry brandy. And yeah, it's red. And Blood and Sand,
Yeah. Blood
I'm
and
tired
okay.
of the vampires.
If you watch this movie,
And he drinks blood.
and they're on the beach. They live in a beach town.
Yeah. And I didn't I texted Ben, I was like, I feel like the cop out here is red wine. Because
Oh, yeah. Just straight out of the
he
bottle,
hands him
right?
this bottle. Yeah. Hands him a bottle and he's like, drink this And, Michael's like, oh, it's wine. Of course I'm going to drink it. And Star is like, no, it's blood. It's blood. So we wanted
My
to,
thing
we
is he
wanted to stick to
takes the
cocktails.
first drink and isn't immediately like, this is not wine.
Gross. This is very coppery.
I wonder if it was like his first time drinking and he's just like, oh, this tastes like all the other wine I've ever had.
Oh, big wine guy. And then oh my gosh, it's that like awkward, cringy, like superimposed, like him drinking it with like the clouds and shit. Oh my god, this movie was very 80s.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will say, as far
Oh,
as the editing
100%.
style.
A lot of it. A lot of other stuff was also very 80s about this movie.
If you want to try Blood and Sand, check the show notes below, get the recipe, hit up the Caskers links, and make yourself one. Hit us up at Cocktails and Classics Pod and let us know what you think of the cocktail. You can watch The Lost Boys right now on Tubi, I believe, with ads.
Yeah.
And then it has kind of been dancing around on sale with the Warner Brothers sale, so maybe keep an eye out for that as well.
And check, because I feel like it was just recently on a streaming... I think it was on HBO. Maybe it just left
like it
not too
probably
long
would've been.
ago. Honestly, this is a movie that will probably come back to HBO like every year around Halloween time, I would imagine. This is one of those like, we'll show up at Halloween and then kind of get taken down after a little bit, but...
It just feels like one of those movies that usually just pops up on streaming all the time. Those like classic kind of like bigger studio movies, I feel like always show up.
Yeah.
So The Lost Boys is a 1987 horror comedy film directed by Joel Schumacher, written by Jan Fisher, James Jeremias, and Jeffrey Boehm. It stars Jason Patrick, Corey Haim, Diane West.
Diane Wiest.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Barnard Hughes, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, Corey Feldman, Jamison Newlander, Alex Winter was in there. I was like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah. No, we watched,
It's the guy from Bill and Ted.
we watched Bill last week. We watched Ted this week,
It currently sits at a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb. And as Ben and I had said, neither of us had watched it. And it had been on my watch list for a while. I don't know. I feel like this movie's kind of hyped up in a sense. I feel like it's more famous or more popular than I would have expected after watching it, I will say.
I think the thing with this movie, one, yes. I feel like there's definitely always been like a big surrounding hype about this movie. But I do also think that it's probably due to the fact that, one, it's a movie with the two Coreys, which was like part of the big thing. I think that had a lot to do with it. It was part of that genre where they were making like a bunch of movies with those two. And I also think it's something not necessarily our age, but like between like our generation and our parents' generation, that's where this movie like just hits.
Like it does kind of remind me. I see like the more like this section, and like thinking back watching it, I'm like, okay, the more like this are Gremlins, Fright Night, An American Werewolf in London, Poltergeist. I'm like, okay, yeah.
I got some that
like,
was even like recommendation of like Goonies came up after. That was kind of in that a more lighthearted but similar kind of vein.
Because like, have you ever seen Fright Night?
No.
Okay, it's very much like the same sort of like. The plot is like a vampire moves in next to him, and he like, I think the vampire's like dating his mom or is like interested in his mom, and so it's like, it's same weird like kind of like it's a little spooky, but it leans more like a lighthearted comedy kind of.
Yeah.
And I will say this one is like that for most of the movie until like the last bit where they like actually have the battle with the vampires, and then dudes are like melting in the bath and their arms are blowing off and stuff.
Yeah, shit
It
got
like really hit
intense
the fan.
towards the end.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? Like this dude's arms are just flying off. Okay, so I don't know if I've ever. I think I watched Stand By Me
You
a little while
think?
ago.
Oh man, if
Yeah,
you
it
haven't
wasn't.
seen
I
that,
didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy it. That's probably. I know. I'm sorry.
Stand By Me is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh,
It's
okay.
definitely in like my top 5 or top 10 movies of all time.
Well, I would definitely give it a another watch, but I've never seen like The Goonies. I haven't
I
watched many
I
Corey
didn't
Feldman
see
movies.
The Goonies until my wife made me watch it like a couple years ago. Because she's like, "Oh my god, you've never seen?" I'm like, "No, we didn't. Just wasn't really on our radar." So, oh my god, you've got to
Yeah.
watch it. And I was like, "Okay." I was good. It wasn't worth all of the hype that people have for it when they watch it as kids, but
Yeah, I feel like as a kid it probably hits differently.
Stand By Me, you've also got to remember, is a period piece set in the 1950s. So, like, the soundtrack is all 50s music, which I enjoy. It's very much kind of Americana, and I don't know.
I mean, I'm a big Stephen King fan,
Yeah,
but
but this
it
isn't
is like
really.
it's not like
It's a
his
novella.
works he's known for.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, which by technically so is Shawshank, but um, just very.
I think it's in the same book, isn't it?
It might
Or no?
be. I don't know. He's got so many, even like novellas that have different collections in them.
Yeah, because I know Stand By Me is in like I think it's is it Four Seasons? What it's I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I
And
think
so it's
so.
like just four stories.
Yeah,
I don't know.
the
I mean,
body.
the man has done so much like
Oh
shit
yeah,
and like yeah like
and
Shawshank or the Green Mile that are like completely different from
yeah,
you know what he's known for
and
is
eighty
it
percent
and
of them are freaking made into movies. So,
dude that guy's got to be worth so much money.
oh god,
And then like half of them he hates. He's like fuck Stanley Kubrick in The Shining.
I liked it.
Like that's
It
like the
was
best adaptation of your.
it was a good movie. Not my book. Did you see the TV series they made? Much better. No, me and absolutely no one else saw your TV series.
So yeah, I mean, I knew Kiefer Sutherland from like 24. Not that I had watched a lot of 24, but like you know, I knew him, and I knew he was in this movie, and so I don't know, I knew it, I knew the hype. So watching it finally, it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I was expecting true horror, and then when I got like when you were like, oh, Joel Schumacher directed it, I was like, huh? And then watching it, I'm like, okay, yes, it's definitely a lot more lighthearted than it's like horror.
Yeah,
Because I was like,
I'll be honest, it got more intense than I was expecting it based on like for what the majority of like the first like 20 minutes is more what I was expecting, and then it kind of got into like when they introduced, what are they, the Frog Brothers?
yeah,
When it got into that, I was expecting it to go even more kind of lighthearted, like kid vampire or kid like monster movie. I feel like there's so many that have kind of done that, like, you know, kids fighting monsters, but also like the brothers like half vampire, so they're teaming up kind of with like monster to fight monster. That's
yeah.
been done so many times before.
I mean, we talked about this earlier, but the movie is just so 80s. Like, there's like the Nazi surf punks, the like the Echo and the Bunnymen cover of "People Are Strange" by The Doors. I was like, this is way 80s.
What's so weird to me is how nostalgia like hit I was by this movie when most of that shit was not around by the time, like, realistically, when you think of like where we would have been, even to be what was his character? Sam? Was it Sam? The main kid?
Yeah.
So for us, when we were like Sam's age, would have been between 2002 or no 2006 and 2008, in that range.
Yeah.
Like nothing of this should have felt nostalgic as it did, but like watching this movie was like, wow, this is a movie I feel like I would have really enjoyed as a kid. Like this feels like a childhood movie that I've seen, and like I have nostalgia for it, though I've never seen it before.
That is something I notice all the time. The like in that same vein, like the most recent one has that same effect to me. It's like it's based in the 80s or whatever,
Yeah,
but like for some reason it just feels so nostalgic to me. And maybe it's just that like maybe it's the themes and
could
of
be.
like what's going on. Like it's like, oh, you're moving, like you're making new friends, it's different, a new town. A lot of these movies have that like bicycling through your like neighborhood thing that
Yep.
like I don't know why that just feels so nostalgic
Oh
to
my
me.
god.
Like
What's so weird is I've lived in a neighborhood for coming up on 3 years. I feel like I don't see kids riding bikes like up and down the street. When I was a kid, that's all we did. You rode your
yeah.
bike to your friend's house, they got on their bike, and you just rode around for hours. Street
Yeah.
lights came on, you went home. Like that was it. That was the thing. So yeah, I do think it might be something about that when it's just like, oh, you're going down to where, mind you, I lived in a town that was a mile wide in the middle and maybe five
Yeah.
miles like long. There was no boardwalk. There was no uh, little video rental comic book store area. There was nothing. But just something about like that feeling of like, oh man, you could ride your bike to wherever you wanted to go. Just makes you feel like, oh
Yeah.
man, what a nostalgia trip.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, I lived on a fucking major highway, and there was like 5 kids that like our houses were like kind of in a row, so you just like literally bike across each other's yards because you couldn't get close to the highway. And I was like, that was like our freedom, was you'd literally just like bike down. I saw this reel the other day, that just made me chuckle, where it was like only 90 kids will remember or whatever, and it was like the kid like bikes up to the curb, drops his bike, and then walks into the house, like just walks into some other kid's house, and he's like, Mrs. Johnson, can Tommy come out and play? And I'm like, yeah, that was basically, growing up, you just like were so close to this other people's like family that you just walk into like, or like you'd knock and just be like, hey, is Johnny home? And it'd be like, no, he's not. And they're like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Or like they wouldn't answer the door, it'd just be like now I feel like you just maybe just text or like
Yep.
message, or like I'm sure there's some form of technology that kids would use. Like if
Yeah.
you give your kid an iPad or an iPod, they'd
I
be
remember
like, can you play?
there were some where, because we lived not even a major road. It wasn't in our like our neighborhood was just a little U shape, and then there was like a road, and then you crossed it, and there was like another block of little like neighborhoods. And I had friends that lived over on like across the way, and those friends you would have to call first. You'd talk about hanging out during school. You'd get home. You'd ask your parents. Then you'd have to call. Then you'd have to like ride your bike over there. Then call when you got there to make sure that you got across the road that someone could just look down the street and watch you cross. But no one wanted to do it, so you just had to call when you got to your friend's house. Man, kids in the future who are going to listen to this podcast going to be like, these two old farts are complaining about how things used to be in their day. We're not
I was gonna
even
say
30.
nostalgia chat, basically.
Yeah, no. Like I said, this movie, it was just one of those weird, and maybe it was just like the Joel Schumacher of it all. Um, just because growing up, like, watched Batman Forever like all the time, and even though they are different. There are definitely times where I'm just like, yeah, this feels like it's made by the same guy. So maybe that's just where it kind of hit.
I think the other thing is like, I think just the '80s in general is kind of like this like fetishized like nostalgia trip. Cause like look at Stranger Things, like that,
Now, see,
like
what's so weird is that I don't have, like, watching that show did not give me the same, like, nostalgia vibe as
interesting.
watching
I
this
think I
did.
I think I do from the same reason of this like the you like biking through the neighborhoods, the themes of like like young, like coming of age, kind of like all of that sort of stuff. Like in a sense, in the sense of like shit's happening, even though like they're just like normal kids, like trying to live their lives. Like I don't know. Like I feel like Stranger Things does the same sort of thing, but that one's like pumped up to like 11 because it's like so meta about like this is literally just we're gonna reference every '80s movie ever. And maybe it is the like we're referencing the '80s rather than like this was a movie made in the '80s and it's just like so authentic about it. Like I feel like you wouldn't today. I don't think you would make a movie about these like punk, sexy, bad boy teen vampires like this. You definitely wouldn't have the greased up dude playing the saxophone at the boardwalk. Like,
The shirtless dude just rocking out at the saxophone.
and the
It's
crowd was
so
loving
weird.
it
Oh my
with
god,
his
they were
chain
vibing,
necklace.
man. Oh my god, they were super into it.
Or
Yeah,
like Sam's outfits. That man had some
oh,
loud outfits.
oh my god. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like this movie is so like authentic to like itself in the time. I feel like you just couldn't make it today and like pass it off as if it was like authentic like that. Yeah, I literally I like wrote notes while I was watching the movie. I'm like shirtless, greased up, Bret Hart looking dude killing it on the sax.
Well, I wanted to know if like he was like a famous guy, so like I googled it and tried to look at his thing, and all the pictures of him are just him at conventions, like fan conventions, also shirtless with his saxophone.
Oh my god! Like that's all
Dude's
he
been
does.
coasting on that for like 30 years.
I saw this letterbox review over here that just literally says like Corey Feldman talking in a deep adult voice the whole movie is a is such a choice.
I will say he went too hard.
Oh, you think it's too hard?
I think
Him
he
and
I think he tried to play it way too seriously. And Joel
yeah,
Schumacher didn't have the heart to tell him to be like, "Can you play it more like a kid?"
him and his brother. I do love their characters though. Like their
Oh,
characters,
I think their characters are great. I think just Corey Feldman trying to talk like he's
like
super.
he's Snake Plissken.
Yeah, just stop it.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so I had a question too, Ben. I wrote this down. Is the Batman number 14 actually that rare of a comic?
I honestly, I mean, anything that's if it's like a volume one, like today, yes. I mean, you're talking a book that came out in like 1940. So I mean, any of it, it would be worth money. I'm looking it up to see what that issue is because I honestly don't. The book was the case Batman failed to solve. The antagonist was Red Rip. It's the only time single appearance character. Yeah, this doesn't look like there's anything special about it. I think it's literally just more so the fact that
They
it's
just
just
threw it in
yeah.
there.
Well, I mean, it's an old, and if someone I don't know, it's also would not surprise me if Joel Schumacher was actually like legitimately a huge Batman fan. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was one that like he was looking for. It wouldn't surprise me if that was something that like he chased as a kid and he remembered that issue as like the one he was trying to find to fill his collection and then just put that in as a nod. Cuz I know he really wanted to do like when he did Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, he wanted to do Frank Miller's Batman Year One, and the studio was like, no, after the really dark Batman Returns movie, we really want something more like light and kid friendly, and so we made Batman Forever. And then they went, that was great, but we want to sell more toys. So can you just literally direct a toy commercial and we'll just call it a movie? And then he made Batman and Robin. And poor Joel Schumacher. I don't think he wanted to make that movie the way it was made, and he kind of got forced into it.
With the nipples and the Bat credit card.
Now, I will say, the nipples on the Batsuit thing, I get what he was going for, just didn't translate well. He wanted it to look like statues, like he was basing it off of, or if you ever looked at like Greek armor, Roman armor, like they sculpted it, those sculptures of the armors had nipples on them. That's what he was going for. Not a great choice, but understandable given the context of what you were trying to do. I get it. Batman and Robin in general just was such a bad script. There was too much going on. And it felt like every choice was, again, made to be like, oh, what if we made a reason that he has to wear a different suit and it's silver because that'll sell as a toy? Like, everything about that movie just was like, oh, how will this sell toys to kids? Because that's where we're going to make a shit ton of money.
I will say some of this movie felt a little weird to me, like there was just like some random scenes some of the times that was like the one with the grandpa in his car, where they just got in the car, were going to town, and then they just got out immediately. I was like, what was the point of this entire scene?
Wait, what?
There was a scene where Sam gets in the car with his grandpa, and he's like, we're going to town, and then the grandpa starts up the car, revs the engine, and then they literally like get out. And that was it. Did I watch like a director's cut or something?
I literally watched this movie last night, and for some reason, I cannot remember.
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't think I was watching a special edition or anything. And literally, yeah, there was like just one. It was a minute and a half, 2 minute scene. He's like, we're going to town. And then Sam's like, oh, can I drive on the way back? He's like, no, you can't. And then they get in, and he's like, listen to this puppy roar. It's like I don't know, something pussycat or something. And then he's like, all right, we're done. And then they get out, and they walk back, and that's the end of the scene.
I thought they were going to visit I thought he was going into town because he wanted to meet up with the one widow.
No, that's later. That's when he's like in his truck. He has that like car that they steal. Towards the end.
So I think literally that scene is just to introduce the fact that he has another car. What I love is when they steal his car and and they kill one of the vampires, and then they come back, and his response is just like, you know the rule about putting gas in the car. And he's like, no, I don't. Well, you do now. And then just walks away like no one's in trouble. It didn't need to happen, but it just did.
There is, okay. For as much as I thought this movie was going to be a horror movie, some of the comedic parts were pretty funny. When they're having dinner with Max for the first time, and he's like trying to prove him as a vampire, and the mom's like, oh, Sam grated the cheese all by himself. Like, what the fuck? That's just garlic.
And it's very clearly not cheese.
Or when they like go and like take the holy water.
Oh my god! When they
like,
go into
the funeral.
I thought it was a church.
I think
they were doing a baptism.
I think it was baptism.
Just walk in and they're like filling their jugs. Like they looked around,
like canteens.
They looked over, and all the people in the church are just like, "What the fuck are these kids doing?" They just like awkwardly leave. Oh,
I wrote down, speaking of Stranger Things, I feel like Michael is like definitely inspiration for Billy in Stranger Things in the third season.
That's
the like
Doc Dacre Montgomery.
Yeah,
okay.
like
yes, 100%.
Yeah, I'm like
mullet.
This dude just looks like a complete
one earring. Yeah.
Yeah. The leather jacket type. Yeah. Which I love that he does. Like he sees that Star is hanging out with these guys, so he goes, buys a leather jacket, and then is thinking about getting his ear pierced. And like, what?
It took me a minute when the movie started. And I'm like, okay. I pulled up the cast. Like I googled it just because I was like, okay, Corey Haim. I didn't watch. I don't think I've seen a lot of movies that Corey Haim was in. But I recognized who it was. I didn't recognize Michael. Like the girl looks really familiar, and I don't know why. And then as I'm watching, I'm like, she was a mom on a like, I think it was maybe ABC sitcom, Still Standing.
I don't think I've
Oh
heard
my
of that.
god, yeah, I watched that all the time. Did you ever see Eddie's $1,000,000 Cook-Off? The kid
Yes.
who was the star of that was the star of. He was like their son on that show. But
Interesting.
I was watching it, I'm like, she looks so familiar, and I don't know why. And then it dawned on me who it was, and I was like, wow. I did not think of her as being like a teen actress. I've only ever seen her as like sitcom mom, and it was really kind of a weird. Their relationship just felt weird. It felt like they should have, or they were supposed to give it more time, and all of their
Yeah.
scenes just kind of got cut.
Well, like when he goes back to the place, and then they have the like weird, supposed to be sex scene, but it's like glossed over, like the Room style. Well, actually, the Room is not glossed over. The Room is like a 4 minute sex scene, to the whole song. But this one was like I don't know. I was just like, they've known each other for like a day. Like what the fuck? Like I don't know. It just like the whole thing felt like it was like kind of forced. Like you're saying, like it doesn't really feel like their relationship like developed at all, because it was kind of like she was like hanging out with the vampires. She became one, I guess, at some point, or she has been one. Which she only had to be one like slightly longer than Michael, because Michael at some point was supposed to become a real vampire, because he was starting to like get
Well,
sweaty and
yeah,
like all sorts of stuff. I'm confused how quickly
I
this
don't know, but you don't become a
this
full
transition
you
happens.
don't become a full vampire until you kill someone. So I don't know how she was just like he in like 2 days is like getting bloodlust to the point where he's trying to kill his brother, and she's just like, "Oh, I'm good." Maybe she just pulls like the Batman technique and just like brutally maims people, but it's like, "Hey, didn't kill him. Not dead though."
I also like I've seen this new poster for Lost Boys, the one where they're like hanging from the bridge. So I was like waiting. I was expecting that to not be in the movie. Actually, I will say. I was like, what is this? What is this like poster? What is this like in reference to? And then when it finally came to the bridge scene, I was like, huh, really? Like that's the scene you chose to make the poster for? I don't know. Like it's like, I guess it's a cool scene in essence, but like it's kind of high stakes. You don't really know. Like obviously you kind of know they're vampires. I
I
feel
feel like
like, but
we knew, but imagine seeing that in like 87 for the first time not knowing.
yeah, and like everyone's like falling off, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and then he just wakes up in bed. I was like, what a weird smash cut transition, but all right. Yeah, it just felt weird to me. I don't know. Not to say I didn't like this movie. I really enjoyed watching it. It's just I mean, as someone, as we've talked about older movies before from like the 80s, it's campy and cheesy, I feel like, in all the right ways.
This movie
Which,
felt like such a great like transitional movie for like someone to the horror genre. Like for kids that's like, "Oh, you've watched like Halloween Town or Hocus Pocus or this or you know what I mean? Like things that really don't have stakes. There's not really a lot of like real kind of scariness to it. Then you get to a point where like you watch this movie and it kind of gears you towards watching more like actual scary movies. Like this is like the intro, like the little kid's roller coaster. Like you watch, you know, they're riding like the Ferris wheel
Yeah.
and like, the carousel. It's like, okay, now you're gonna get on this. It's like a mini roller coaster. We're gonna see how this goes to see whether or not we're gonna keep going down this road.
Also, I wanna know, are towns with like boardwalks and like amusement parks like this, are they really like this? Um, cause like I've read, speaking of Stephen King, I read Joyland is what it's called. It's like one of his like detective novels, sort of like he did like a series. I forget what it's like, noir, like little detective stories, like crime stories. And so it's about like a guy who's in college and he goes to live in this beach town and works at an amusement park like this. And I'm like, do people really like go to these things all the time? Like if you're living in this town and it's summer, are you at the amusement park every night? Because is it like, do you have to pay admission? Are you only paying per ride? Like how does it work? And then like, is it really like as big of a thing as all these movies make it out to be? I feel like.
I could see back then it being a thing, especially being in like California where it's nice year round. I remember going to New York City for our senior trip, and we went to the Coney Island, and like it it was April, barely anything was open. We went to one of the like amusement parks there, and we were like the only people there. It's like this is nothing like what they always show you Coney Island being like. But then again, it was like mid-April. It was the middle of a weekday. So like people were at work. There wasn't people were at work, kids were at school. We were just like, oh, we're on a school trip, so we could just kind of fuck around for the day and go to the amusement park.
I was gonna say you hadn't watched The Warriors yet, and you knew it was a shithole where like gangs hide out.
Warriors come out to play. No, I hadn't been indoctrinated to that yet. But yeah, that's really my only experience with that type of like boardwalk atmosphere, and it was nothing like what the movies make it seem like. But I'd imagine like summertime, especially if, and I'm assuming back then probably was like where they would book like bands, and probably I feel like local bands meant more back then. Like local garage bands and that were a bigger thing. That if they had a following, yeah, people probably would go down, and like that was just what you did on a Friday or Saturday night. Like that was the place to go. Like I just feel like that's probably what you did. Probably sounds like a cool time, hanging out at your comic book store.
Yeah, their comic book store is like in some sketchy back alley though. Like what the fuck?
That's where you get the best deals.
Or that's where the vampire hunters are.
Yeah, yeah. The vampire.
Also, are
the
they not
vampire
kids?
hunters whose parents are either like stoned or dead.
I was gonna say, did their parents own the comic book shop, or do they? Because they were like
I'd assume the parents. I'd assume
14-year-old
the parents
kids.
own it, but like the entire time, everything they looked like they were. It looked like Weekend at Bernie's. Like the parents just like were hunched over with sunglasses on.
It's the '80s, man. What are you gonna do?
It was crazy, man. Wow. Okay, so I'm looking at some of the trivia for this, and this is actually kind of interesting. So Richard Donner, who is the producer on the movie, was originally set to direct, but his production languished. He moved on to Lethal Weapon and let Joel Schumacher direct. Lethal Weapon would come out in the same year. Richard Donner, famous for directing a million things. Wow, I didn't know he was. I didn't even realize he was attached. But that makes so much more sense as to why it feels more nostalgia, even as much as the Schumacher connection does. I think the fact that it's a Donner movie just takes it over the top in terms of why it feels like such a nostalgia themed movie.
This was actually the first movie of the two Coreys, which I didn't realize. Also, the fact that they keep going back to the like theme song, the like "Thou shalt not pass." It's like keeps going back to that song. I know, like, God, what was it? Oh God, I forget the movie. Zach had made a comment with some movie about how like, oh, it kept going back to this like reoccurring
Oh, it was
like
the
same
Warriors. He
song,
kept
and I'm like,
he was
oh,
yeah,
it
he was
was. It was
like,
like he
oh.
hated the like.
And then the next week he was talking about freaking Scarface. And he's like, I loved how it kept going back to the same thing.
Yeah, it kept recalling the. It was like a reprise the whole time or a reprise. I'm like, no, it's literally the same thing. But I feel like this is like a similar effect where it's like you don't technically hear the same part of the song really. Like it kind of samples different parts, and then you get the one big like arch. But like it did, it was like kept going back to it. I'm like, what is this? Is this like just a like is this a theme? Is this just like a random song? Like what are we doing here? It's like creepy choir children.
Yeah, I don't like I said, I don't know what it was about this movie, but just watching it just felt like such a nostalgia trip for me. It shouldn't have. I can't explain it, but it did. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Not what I was expecting. I expected. I didn't realize like when it was like Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. I expected more of it to be about those two. I didn't expect as much going on with the brother. Like I just didn't expect it. It didn't make sense.
Whoa. All right, so lighthearted trivia. When asked why he did the film, Joel Schumacher simply stated, "Vampires are hot. They're the only erotic monsters. Frankenstein is not hot."
Joel Schumacher. Joel Schumacher was an interesting dude. He's just a crazy dude, man.
That sounds like what was it with the alien, where the guy's like, "We needed a monster who could as easily fuck you as they could kill you," or something like that. I'm like, what? But not as lighthearted. It says Corey Feldman almost wasn't in the movie. At the time, Corey was struggling with drug abuse at a young age, showed up to work coming down from a cocaine binge. Schumacher was very upset that he kept dozing off and was unable to continue filming, so he fired him, but hired him back the next day after Corey apologized and swore to come to work prepared from then on, which he did.
Yeah. Dude, how crazy is it to be like that young, a Hollywood like star? Like I don't like I feel like you read things about like child stars doing drugs and that and you're just like, yeah, and then you're like, Jesus, how fucked up must that be that like these 14-year-olds are literally in rehab for cocaine addictions? Like
Yeah, dude, I don't like Corey Feldman has had a rough life.
both of them did.
Well, but I think Corey Feldman also talks about like how he was sexually abused by somebody in Hollywood. I think, right?
He's mentioned it, and then he literally released he came out with a movie that was literally called like the rape of two Coreys or something.
Because yeah, he's kind of like blacklisted or something, right? Like no one really.
Yes. So he basically made that movie, which, by the way, he basically came out and said like, I'm going to come out with this movie and tell the truth of what happened to me and Corey Haim. And he was basically talking about this on The View, and I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was. Was it Barbara Walters or Joan?
I think it was Barbara Walters when
She was like, "Why would you do that?
Goes off
Why
on
would
him.
why would you do
Yeah.
that? Why would you drag these people's names through the mud now?" It was like, really? What, we're just trying to protect sex offenders now?
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, so the movie,
Yeah, that he said that Feldman wasn't damaging an entire industry with his allegations.
so basically it says that Charlie Sheen raped Corey Haim on the set of the 1986 movie Lucas. It says that there were a couple people that are actually like registered sex offender Marty Weiss, convicted child molester John Grissom, and Alfie Hoffman as abusers. And then he said there was, quote, a wolf pack group after him working to try and discredit him. To which he said he suspected that Corey Haim's mom was the front of the group.
Yeah, because it says here that she said that it was a different actor who was actually the rapist, and that Corey's claims are made up.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember it coming out, and then, it felt like as soon as it was there, it was talked about. Such goes the life when there's a 24-hour news cycle, but it was really talked about. It was really talked about. Charlie Sheen was like, this never happened. It was like, oh, Charlie Sheen. It's like, yeah, but Charlie Sheen's like not really a big name now after Two and a Half Men, and he did his own thing and destroyed his own career. So
Also, I didn't know that. So, I mean, this probably explains some of what went on in his life with his drug and alcohol abuse, but it says that he began the Emancipation Proclamation in Hollywood at the age 15 when he was granted emancipation from his parents. He stated that he was worth $1 million by the age 15, and by the time the judge ordered the bank records to come forward, he only had $40,000. So I'm like, that's probably a lot of the problems was he was freed from his parents at the age 15 and then was worth so much fucking money that it just probably got him in trouble
oh
too.
yeah, well, not to mention even before then, he was probably doing whatever to deal with the stress of being probably heavily relied on to be the breadwinner in his family.
Have you seen the Shia LaBeouf movie?
Honey Boy?
Yeah.
I have not. It's another one that I feel
Okay.
like I should watch or should have watched but haven't. Don't know if or when I will.
I imagine that is very accurate to what a lot of these child stars have gone through in life. For everyone that is I know, who is it, Austin Butler, the guy who just played Elvis?
Yeah.
I've heard him in interviews talk about his mom passed away not too long ago, but he was like, my mom was so supportive. She took me to auditions and she was really always in my corner. I'm like, for every one of those stories, I feel like you get the Jeanette McCurdy's, you get the Shia LaBeoufs, where it's the parents are so obsessed with their kids becoming stars and making all the money, and then taking their money from their kids and forcing them to audition and miss school and all this. I feel like there's so many more of those crazy power hungry parents than there are the you know what? Why don't you take an acting class? Oh, and I fell in love with acting, and I knew it was for me.
Well, have you ever heard
Daniel
Daniel Radcliffe talk about his mom and dad?
Kind of.
So he did. He was on Conan's podcast talking about it, and he was basically before he would sign on to do the next Harry Potter movie. Every time his parents would ask him, "Do you still want to do this?" Because if you don't, you don't have to. You don't have to do this. And he was like, no,
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it. It's fun. But he has said my parents were so good about the fact that they weren't pushing me to do it. They were just they constantly wanted to make sure I was still enjoying it. I'm like, yeah, that's good. You read some of these things where Jeanette McCurdy's mom sounded insane.
Yeah, I haven't read her book, but I've read excerpts and people talking about it, and I'm like, Jesus,
Dude, Max had such dad vibes. Such dad vibes. And there was something, so I think it was spoiled for me due to the fact that I watched we watched, oh my god, why can I not think of it? The hell is the vampire movie with Taika Waititi in it?
Oh, What We Do in the Shadows?
What We Do in the Shadows. I've watched that, and now subsequently the show. When it's yes, vampires, we have to be invited in. And it's okay. So when they invite it, when he's standing outside holding the flowers and he looks at Michael and goes, "Can I come in?
You're the man of the house.
Can I come in?" Yeah, that's when I was like, oh, it's him. It's got to be him.
Yeah.
Even after they
this subtle.
Even after they pulled
The subtle vampire hints.
Yeah, but even after they pulled the whole oh, we tried all this stuff, it can't be him. I'm like, no, it's him. It's him. He had to be invited in.
Yeah, and then what's his face says later, he's like, garlic doesn't work. It's okay, that explains it.
But also he said it doesn't work when I've been invited in or something.
Oh yeah, like you lose that some of your
Yeah, it
powers.
loses the power when you're invited in. Oh, okay.
Also, the heavy handed foreshadowing of like the grandpa putting in the giant wooden stake. And then he's like driving into town to go see the widow with the stakes on the back of his truck. I'm like, okay, these are coming. These are going through a vampire at some point in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are fucking foreshadowing the shit out of that.
Now, was he was the grandpa a vampire or
I
a
don't,
half vampire?
I don't think so.
Because at the end, wasn't he like drinking something that looked like the thing of blood?
No, I think that was a root beer.
Just the root beer?
I thought so because he said like this is my special shelf with my root beers, but
Maybe they weren't root beers, and that's why he didn't want the kids to drink them.
that might be. I mean, he does say that line like he knew they were vampires. Because what does he say? Oh, the thing I hate about this town is all the vampires or something.
Yeah.
As the Lost Boys is inspired by Peter Pan, the role of Grandpa is linked with the role of Captain Hook. As the roles are reversed and the Lost Boys are bad in this adaptation, Hook is good. Grandpa shares Hook's mystery and illusion personality. He is often seen plotting, and at the end is the one to defeat the head vampire, making it clear that he despises all vampires and was aware the whole time. So, no. And I think it is just a root beer.
Just a crazy coincidence, huh?
Also, I didn't know this was the movie where the fucking. Speaking of what we do in the shadows, where they like trick the guy that comes over, Nick or whatever, like the douchey dude who ends up turning into a vampire. Like the noodles are the rice is maggots and the noodles are worms.
Yeah.
I didn't know this is like where that came from, which is like such a douche vampire move.
Yeah. Pretty much. Giant dick move.
Ha! They're vampires. They're still pranksters though.
Oh. They still just like to have fun. It's because they're still young, you know? They don't grow up.
There's kids. They're young forever.
Just
You know,
kids.
forever young. I wanna be forever young. Surprised that song wasn't in here. I did love when they show Sam's room a couple times. I did notice the giant Molly Ringwald poster in there, and then who I thought was George Michael
Oh, no, man.
it's actually Rob
It's
Lowe.
that man Rob Lowe. Yeah.
I saw that in the trivia section where it was like, I guess it was like Joel Schumacher was basically like hinting that Sam is in the closet.
Due to his pink bike, super masculine, super homoerotic Rob Lowe poster on the wall. The hook earring he's got in his, or the, one earring he wears.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, makes sense. But, Joel Schumacher just played it off like, what? No, I just directed a movie with Rob Lowe and just wanted to put his poster in the movie. All right, man. Sure.
Neither Ben nor I had seen this film, so you're gonna get two fresh ratings. Ben, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You go ahead. I'm wavering here because I have an objective and a subjective.
Interesting. All right. I just have one rating. I don't know. I had been wanting to watch this one, and I feel like I waited a little long. Like Ben said, this movie had a lot of like that nostalgia feeling, and it feels like one I should have watched when I was a kid because it would have been like perfect for growing up. I feel like this is one like Back to the Future, or like I'm trying to think of like these other movies from like the 80s and 90s that I watched when I was younger, and I was like, oh man, these movies just feel so right for like pre-teen age, And as somebody who does like I enjoy horror, and I really enjoy horror comedy. I love when you can like poke fun at the genre itself and be a little meta about it. The movie is like campy and cheesy, all in all the right ways. Feels very 80s. like Ben said, like Corey Feldman kind of like plays his character like a little ham-fisted, a little too serious. I think sometimes that works out in its favor for this movie. Like it's never taking itself too seriously, even though there are moments where it's like a little spooky or a little like crazy, where there's, you know, people falling in holy water and melting and like the what is it, death by stereo. Like I don't know, I think it tries at some points to be a little too serious, and it kind of leans almost, it almost like leans back around to being like humorous in the sense of like that they were playing it so serious. I really enjoyed this one. I would recommend it. I kind of went in expecting one thing and was surprised with what I got. And surprised enough to give it an 8 out of 10. I think it kind of lives up to its height. It's kind of like cult classic-y in a sense, almost, in my opinion. Like, I feel like it's not, like, it shouldn't be as popular as it is. I don't know. Like, it's weird.
Yeah. All right. All right. That fits. Because, like, subjectively, is this movie great? Not really. Or, what is it? Not subject. Objectively? Objectively, this movie's okay. I'd give it, like, a 6. Subjectively, I agree with you. I think this movie's, like, an 8. Like, this movie is... It's good. It's a good movie. It's fun. It feeds my nostalgia for some reason, the late 80s, but I think it's because that vibe kind of lasted until like into the 90s.
Yeah.
Like I feel like
it got more colorful in the 90s, but it was still,
yeah, I feel like the late 80s and kind of through like to the mid 90s were very similar. Some things kind of like subtly changed, but I don't think there was as big of a culture shift until like the late 90s to around the 2000s. Like I think things got a little bit more in movie wise, maybe like a little bit darker / more neon. But like I don't know. I think that era still kind of connects. I think what you said kind of about, or I guess I I said it first about Corey Feldman kind of like the dark or the low voice being like it didn't work, but it didn't work so well that it almost made it feel like something about it made it feel more like approachable or like something you could actually see watching like as a kid. Like
yeah.
I feel like if he would have played it more as like your general like kid feeling, I don't know that it would have helped the movie feel almost as lighthearted as it did. Like the fact that he was playing it up as like this kid who thinks he's hot shit, I guess kind of lends itself to the movie being something lighter and something that makes you feel like you're not necessarily watching like a full-on horror movie. Yeah, I think this is a movie that like late childhood into early teens would like be a great like transition movie. I really liked it. I would put this in like my Halloween rotation as something like I would watch. I do agree. I think it is very much like it has a following and the people who love this movie, but I don't think you have to be like a part of that to enjoy it. I think you can just watch this movie and be like, wow, this was fun. It was a fun little, horror comedy. The cast was good. It's always worrisome when your cast is that young as to how good or bad a movie is going to be. This is one that did a good job. Yeah, I recommend it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you have seen it and you don't like it, well, respectfully, I disagree. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
If you enjoyed this, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram at Cocktails and Classics Pod. Enter that giveaway. April 29th is the last day to enter, so hurry over there. Put your entry in, and hopefully you'll win one of 5 movie bundles. Make a Blood and Sand show notes below to get that recipe, and hit up the caster links to get some alcohol delivered directly to you. Check us out in the next episode. And as always, watch responsibly.